Hello and welcome to DeKoder. I'm Nidhi Razdan and we are back with Tracking Trump. This week's episode is going to be a bit different because we are in the middle of heightened tensions between India and Pakistan, which the whole world is watching closely. Following the horrific terror attack in Pahalgam on the 22nd of April, India launched Operation Sindoor this week, essentially airstrikes on terror camps deep inside Pakistan. This has been followed with further Indian military action after India said that Pakistan attempted to engage a number of military targets in north and western India. An air defense system in Lahore has been neutralized, says the Indian Ministry of Defense. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh met opposition leaders and has said that 100 terrorists are believed to be dead in India's strikes. Now, how the world, and particularly America, responds to this crisis will be crucial. Mr. Trump has come out in India's support on the fight against terror, but in his latest statement, he's also urged both sides to pull back. I want to see it stop, the president said. Let's listen in.
I get along with both. I know both very well, and I want to see them work it out. I want to see them stop. And hopefully they can stop now. They've gone tit for tat, so hopefully they can stop now. But I know both. We get along with both countries very well. Good relationships with both, and I want to see it stop. And if I can do anything to help, I will be there.
And joining us on the program today, we have with us two distinguished diplomats who have spent their careers handling crises like these. We have Mr. Syed Akbaruddin, India's former ambassador to the United Nations. Also with us is Tim Roemer, who was America's ambassador to India some years ago. Thank you very much to both of you for joining us today. I'd like to, begin with you, Ambassador Akbaruddin. What makes this particular Indian strike in Pakistan different from Balakot in 2019 and the Uri surgical strikes in 2016 before that? And why could this be a turning point in this subcontinent?
So, Nidhi, you're right that this is different. And it's different for very many reasons. First of all, unlike in Balakot or in Uri, what triggered this off was an egregious attempt by Pakistan to foment discord or, if I may say, even religious war within India. Look at the mechanisms that they adopted in the massacre in Pahalgam. It was unheard of that you segregate people and then shoot them at close range and leave their family members traumatized. Although these were civilian tourists who had come from all parts of India. So these images have been carried to all parts of India. The country is actually large segments of the country, which sometimes felt terrorism only impacted the people who were directly hit by it. It's no longer that case. So first, the enormity of this effort is different. Next, India has perhaps reached the limits of its tolerance in this. Previously, the effort, if you look back from 2016 to 29, these were limited responses. This time, India seems to be ready for a response which would be much stronger, hopefully to restore deterrent, but also taking into account that the issue of terrorism, which has bedeviled India's relationship with Pakistan for the last 4 decades, need to be addressed in a serious manner rather than a sort of a one-off response. So for all these reasons, the amount of equipment that is being used, crossing India's response has been not only in the Pakistani occupied region of not only in Pakistani occupied region, but also elsewhere, wherever there were terrorist camps. So in Punjab, in Lahore, in Bhagalpur, where these terrorists are known to have their establishments. Also, it's clearly targeted them where it could have targeted other places. So these are precision-guided efforts which focus only on these areas. And it was non-escalatory in the sense it did not either target military establishments or other establishments of a strategic nature.
Absolutely. Ambassador Roemer, how have you seen the West's position vis-a-vis terrorism that has hit India evolve over the years? And specifically Washington, as a reporter, I've certainly seen it from being ambiguous to being more forthcoming in India's fight against cross-border terrorism. We've seen much more supportive statements, including from the Trump administration in this term. How do you look at this escalation and the American view on this?
Well, let me start personally by saying, having lived in India and served as the U.S. ambassador in Delhi and traveled extensively throughout the country, I was one of the first ambassadors in 30 years to travel back up to Jammu and Kashmir and see that beautiful region, see the efforts on the part of India to bring harmony and tourism and peace back to that area. So personally, having viewed that, I can see in the context of the terrorist attack back in April of the 22nd of April, this is a brutal and devastating attack on India. Furthermore, I served in India 2009, 10, and 11. And that was, of course, on the heels of the brutal attack on India in Mumbai in 2008. There's a history of attacks on India, on their homeland, 2001 on the parliament, 2005 in Delhi. You've just been talking about 2016 and 2019, and now we have another one here. So I think what we're seeing in terms of your question on the reaction from the West, on the one hand, there is a real sympathy and support for India to protect itself and do something about terrorism when it hits your country so brutally and so aggressively. On the other hand, there is also a consistency in the position from the United States being expressed by President Trump to try to de-escalate things, to try to bring things to a calmer fashion, especially after India has surgically and strategically attacked 9 different sites. As the ambassador pointed out, from what we're gleaning so far, these 9 sites have been militant sites, not military Pakistani sites. So that was important, a distinction as well. So now you're seeing the UN, the United States, our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, start to weigh in, having conversations with the Prime Minister of Pakistan, having conversations with Dr. Jaishankar, and trying to calm tempers and bring things toward de-escalation at this point.
So, would it be fair to say, as you suggested there in your closing comments, that there would be furious back channels at play between the US, India, Pakistan, and of course other players? We've got the Saudi Minister of State for Foreign Affairs in Delhi. We also have the Iranian Foreign Minister in Delhi at this time, which who would have thought would happen at any other point? So, would you say there is a lot of back channels that are at work internationally at the moment, Ambassador Roemer, to de-escalate the situation?
Yes, and yes to your questions. And there should be. There should be back channeling and direct front channeling on this issue, because it is such a precarious and dangerous position to be in. We know the history between India and Pakistan. We know that both are nuclear equipped countries. We know that both ultimately want to resolve this and want a peaceful resolution at the right time and the right way and fair to both sides. I think you're going to see Russia and China weigh in, hopefully with Islamabad. You're going to see President Trump, hopefully in a conversation with Mr. Modi at some point, have a conversation not only about trade and tariffs, but about resolving this conflict and bringing the temperature down and getting more back channel going. You're going to see Secretary of State and now National Security Advisor Marco Rubio weigh in more aggressively on both sides. and push this a little bit harder toward resolution and de-escalation. We don't have a U.S. ambassador in India right now. That is surprising to me. Many other countries now have either somebody nominated or in place. A U.S. ambassador on the ground. When I was there, I would be back channeling with both sides, with other partners, with the Indian government, trying to ascertain where they were going next, and talking to people at all levels of government in India, and passing that information back on to the United States at the appropriate levels. Hopefully, we'll have an ambassador soon. This is precisely the kind of job that they do, and I think you're going to see a lot of front channel, back channel, both channeling, and a lot of attention appropriately being paid to this situation right now.
Ambassador Akbaruddin, on the same point about how the West and particularly the US have dealt with Pakistan and their evolving position. Pakistan was at one point, in a sense, a very important partner for the US post 9/11. We know about the weapons sales, etc., in that whole fight against terrorism. And there seemed to be an American position where they were not really looking at terror groups that were targeting India, but more at groups that they believed were targeting their interests. Have you seen an evolution in that position today?
So, yes, that terrorism is a key factor in any US response is pretty evident. Having said that, I think we also need to take into account it's not only oral condemnation that works in such matters. There are key levers that the United States has, and it can easily use them should it desire to do so. Today, if I may say, in a tumultuous world, we have seen others also use their, if I may say, abilities to engage with all parties everywhere. I'm not talking about India, Pakistan, but look at what the Gulf is doing. It facilitated talks between Saudi Arabia, facilitated talks between USA and Russia. Oman is facilitating talks between Iran and the US. UAE helped in repatriation of prisoners of war between Ukraine and Russia. So in a matter of saying, the Gulf perhaps is the new geopolitical Switzerland, enabling this. Having said that, there are other levers that the United States alone has. For example, issues relating to funding of Pakistan, whose economy requires constant funding. I think while condemnation is on the right track, we need to see something more, because only condemnation or back channel diplomacy is not going to play out. These concerns will be stopped. Sure, back channels are important, and I think that's the only way to act now, because front channel diplomacy has reached its limits, and given that India and Pakistan have very limited leverages against each other, perhaps the back channel, and India and Pakistan have a history of back channels themselves. For example, I remember during Kargil, there were back channels between Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif and the Indian establishment, passing on to them the tapes of the generals in conversation. They have also been back channels between National Security Advisor Mr. Ajit Doval and his then counterpart previously. So that's perhaps the best way to go around. Frankly, from a front channel thing, India, I don't think, is any more interested in escalation. There was a trigger that was retaliated to, and there was a response, and there ends the matter, unless Pakistan decides to take it a notch up. And perhaps that's where the back channel and other elements can work in.
On the leverage that you said that the US can use, if I could press you a little more on that, are you talking also about, let's say, the Financial Action Task Force, International Monetary Fund, World Bank, these bodies actually being used, and even at the UN. I mean, we know that China always comes to Pakistan's defense when it comes to, let's say, proscribing terrorists like Masood Azhar. In the past, China has always used its veto, etc. But at these other multilateral bodies like the FATF, IMF, etc., can the US do more?
Certainly, it can do more because none of these, for example, the IMF cannot extend new tranches of loan to Pakistan without American support. All it requires is that if these tranches are paid for and it's used for defense purposes, it will not solve the economic problem. So you can raise these questions. The FATF was a very good tool as long as Pakistan was on the FATF grey list. But since it's been removed, there is no sort of a check on terrorist activities because Pakistan now sees that it has a free hand. In fact, the former Pakistani chief of army staff had repeatedly said that Pakistan can't sustain a war for long. So it's pretty clear on the economic front, there are leverages that can easily be used. I'm not very worried on the issues of global designation because these are normative in nature. Their practical import kicks in after quite some time. So perhaps economic leverage is the way to go about it.
Ambassador Roemer, if you could weigh in on that, as Ambassador Akbaruddin says, that it requires more than back channeling now. It requires consequences. It requires the US to use its leverage at these multilateral bodies economically vis-a-vis Pakistan. Do you see that happening?
Well, first of all, I want to go back to the question that you asked the ambassador about the U.S. relationship with India on terrorism specifically and how has it evolved. It's not just evolved in terms of the U.S.-India, the strength, the depth, the trust, the bilateral relationship and multilateral cooperation. It has completely flipped from the United States being a partner with Pakistan for decades to now the United States embracing India's diversity, India's democracy, India's strong economy and growth, the people-to-people ties we have. When I lived in India and was ambassador there, I was personally politically responsible for helping negotiate brand new homeland security agreements, intel sharing agreements, historic new defense and security cooperation exchanges and agreements. This is a phenomenal relationship between the United States and India. And it's based upon us going through the 9/11 attacks of terrorism on our country and India going through the terrorist attacks primarily on the back of the Mumbai attacks, which were almost your equivalent of 9/11 in India. So this has transformed itself in very, very important tactical, strategic, and geopolitical ways between the United States and India. We couldn't have a better partner. Now, the economy and leveraging the economy, I think you've got to be very careful here. Pakistan's economy is nowhere near India's strength. India knows that. They don't really have to compete much with Pakistan anymore like they might have 40 years ago. India does not have the internal terrorism problem that Pakistan has and the potential instability there. There are a lot of things with terrorism there. We do not want the terrorists getting access to, any kind of weapons in Pakistan. So we do not want to destabilize Pakistan by going after too strongly some of these economic issues. That's not in India's interest. You do not want to have a country on your border that has huge economic problems. So I think we have to be very careful and tread carefully on the economic leverage and the economic tools. Going back to diplomacy, going back to front channels and back channels, going back to world pressure, especially to make sure when the Prime Minister of Pakistan has said about India's counterstrike, that's an act of war. We have to ratchet this down. We have to calm temperatures on the Pakistani side, on the Indian side, and make sure this does not escalate.
I think part of the problem, and that's a very interesting point of view that you put forward, Ambassador Roemer, about a destabilized Pakistan not even being in India's interest. But when I come back to the way not just the US but even the EU views the India-Pakistan relationship, Ambassador Akbaruddin, part of the problem seems to be that are we at an equal level anymore? I mean, there is clearly a country that is the victim of state-sponsored terrorism here, and a country that is harboring and supporting and arming terror groups from its soil, and it's part of their foreign policy. So, is it fair for the world to look at India and Pakistan as two equals across the table?
Nidhi, before I answer that question, let me just respond. And I agree that India's bilateral ties with the US have exponentially improved. There is no doubt about that. And it has improved from every administration to the next. And it's just been a continuous trajectory of improvement. Having said that, clearly, from what I hear, Pakistan's, this is a old story. I've been listening since I was a counselor in the Indian High Commission in Pakistan. Because what comes next? If the present regime is destabilized, it's going to be worse. Frankly, what could be worse for India than what we've gone through in the last 10, 15 days? So you can make that distinction, and people have the ability to make that distinction from a distance. For India, what is the present regime in Pakistan? Nothing could be worse. And if we are told that, look, there are worse things to come, so let's leave the bad as it is, it's not something that will be palatable to either the Indian population or the Indian leadership. And as you said, perhaps it's time to once and for address these issues in a much more serious manner. And US has a lot of leverages. And I think a reluctance to use those leverages, saying that it could be worse, frankly, nothing could be worse for India than what we faced at Pahalgam.
I think that's been very, very well put by you. In fact, I have time for a quick last question to both of you. Ambassador Roemer, I'll take that to you first. Where all of this is happening when President Trump has completed 100 days in office just last week in his second term. Overall, do you think that despite the turmoil that he has with so many of his own allies and other countries, has the India-US relationship been more or less on an even keel and sort of stayed the course?
Well, I just want to comment on the ambassador's statement for 1 second, and then I'll come back to your last question. You don't have to pick either or. The United States and India can have both. We can be partners, both geopolitical and strategic partners on counterterrorism. We both feel very, very strongly about condemning the attack that took place on India on April 22nd. We've worked in a bipartisan way through many administrations, from Clinton to Bush to Obama to Trump to Biden, to deepen this relationship and strengthen it with India even further. We see India as a global power. Pakistan is struggling with IMF loans. They're struggling with internal terrorism. They're struggling with the remnants of the Afghan war. There are a lot of problems up there. We don't have to pick either or. The United States can be both for India and work with them on counterterrorism to combat that coming across the border. And the United States can promote peace and stability and de-escalation in that region as a peace partner with India, and hopefully Pakistan ratchets things down from here. In terms of Mr. Trump, President Trump, and his first 100 days, he is certainly on the foreign policy side trying to create and transform the world through tariffs and try to drive more jobs, supply chains, home shoring back to the United States. trying to make sure the middle class and working people are taken care of. I think that the tariff policy is something that you have to be very careful with. You can use it individually with countries. You can use it to threaten China and a country that we've had a huge deficit with, over $300 billion at times. I think it's $245 billion now. Those are things that we should be able to leverage them with and not have to apply tariffs across the board to countries such as the UK and Brazil, who we have trade surpluses with. So I think there are ways to do this effectively, to look out for our middle class, to look out for our economy, to increase job growth, to increase opportunities at home for Americans without destabilizing the world trade system. Back home in the United States,
that's why you're a good diplomat, because you put that really well. I said,
okay, I'll stop there.
No, I said you put that point of view across really well, and that your diplomatic experience really shows. Ambassador Akbaruddin, the last word to you on that, on how the India-US relationship has navigated these first 100 days, and again. On the security front, the extradition of one of the key accused in the 26/11 attack was actually a big moment. I mean, to see him, Tawahur Rana, being extradited to India was a big moment, and it's happened under the Trump administration. So do you see, at least on security issues, a greater alignment between India and the US? I think the EU is a different story, but with the US at least, do you see a greater alignment?
So let me, as I said at the beginning, and let me reiterate, our relationships with the US have fundamentally altered, and there's no doubt about it. Also, as you said, the Trump administration's first 100 days have been tumultuous for everyone across the globe, including for US citizens, because the sort of changes that are coming in the US are very different from what happened in the past, and so is it happening in the rest of the world. Having said that, all those who are always facing the brunt of these things will always ask for more, because that's the nature of the game. Yes, we did get Tawahur Rana, but we couldn't get David Hadley. So there will always be more from the victim wanting for more. And yes, in a manner of saying, we didn't get him in position. We got him his deposition. But it's not the same thing as Tawahur Rana. And again, as I said, I'm not questioning that is improved, but the victim will always ask for more. And it's the nature of things that we will ask for more. Otherwise, India, as you said, is a large country, is a big country. We will handle terrorism. We have the wherewithal. We will handle it. We hope our friends will be with us as we handle it. It is good for us. It's good for the world if our friends will. Otherwise, India is a civilizational state. It will handle it. It's been there for 5,000 years. It will continue to exist as a vibrant, new, young, democratic state. We will handle these things. It's not that that's that's one issue which will make or break India. We've surmounted many difficulties in the past, and we'll continue to do so.
Ambassador Akbaruddin, Ambassador Roemer, thank you very much for joining us on what has been a very, very crazy week. I don't know how else to describe it here in the subcontinent. It was great to get a perspective from both of you on this and on this critical issue. Thank you very much for joining us on DeKoder. Thank you.
Thank you, Nidhi.
Thank you.
And we will be back with another episode next week, tracking this story and much more as the Trump administration continues to roll out one decision after another. Do join us then.